As some of you know, when my mother forgets a word, she is the queen of coming up with new words that aren't bound by the laws of English. And usually they're fun, but sometimes they're terrifying. I was like 16 when this happened, but she ran in from the backyard, kind of panicked, and was like, "You need to be careful when you're out there. I just saw one of those, like a spider lobster." And I was like, I was trying to do my homework, but you saw what? Spider lobster. I forgot what it's called. I was like, I'm gonna need you to think harder because I can't sleep with a spider lobster outside. It's gonna get me. And she's like, okay, picture like a crab who's just like a total asshole. So I was like, okay, I could take on asshole crab 1v1, but spider lobster, that'll beat me in the cage match. And I think it'll drag me to hell after. And then I visualized a spider lobster in my head, and I was like, Mom, do you mean a scorpion? Because scorpion in Spanish is just escorpión. And she's like, oh shit, you're right, it's the same word. I was like, yeah, wait, we have scorpions?
Storytime about the time a nail salon took advantage of my blindness. Sister and I got our nails done. We used to go all the time, and while the lady was doing my nails, she asked me how I knew how much money I had. At the time, I used cash, never again after this, but I told her that I folded my bills a certain way. I told her that I folded my 20s different than my 10s, different than my 5s, different than my 1s. Anything of her asking that question, I think it's a good question, and I just thought she was curious. I got done with my nails. She walked me towards the front, and my sister was actually just finishing up with hers, so it was perfect. There's another man at the front, and he asked me how I knew how much money I had. I told him the same thing. Before I left to go to the nail salon, I made sure exactly how much money I had. My sister helped me count it, helped me make sure that I folded the right bills, just so I knew how much I had, how much I would spend. I gave her the money. Positive that I gave her the right amount because it was just folded, it was folded perfectly, and I counted it out. She takes it, starts talking in a different language, and then tells me that I owe her $20 more. I didn't, and I told her the exact amount I gave her, and she's like, no, you didn't give me this amount, you gave me that amount. Like from part 2.
I just went and got boba, and literally the lady was like, do you want boba in that? And I was like, yeah, please. She leans over the cup, spits the bobas in. I'm like, that was hot. And we just started making out on the counter.
Put a finger down if when Shawn Mendes was touring in your city, you tried to go meet him because you're a really big fan. Then you actually ended up seeing him, which is fantastic. But he was with Camilla because apparently they're dating. So you approach them very nervously. Keep in mind you are the only fan in sight. And you ask for a picture with the both of them. Even though you don't really care about Camilla at all, you just want a picture with Shawn. It's the polite thing to do since they're together. Then you get rejected by Shawn. In a very sweet way though, he says, not right now, sweetheart, but you're not stupid. You know that means not ever, please get out, which is cool. Camilla doesn't even look at you. You are practically scum to her. That's a-okay. Then when you think it's over, they walk not even 2 feet away from you and commence eating each other's faces. A full-on makeout session, not even an attractive one. Just a sloppy, sad makeout session like they were trying to prove something. 2 feet away from their 17-year-old fan who just asked for a picture and got rejected by them. Yeah, then they went into the elevator, kept making out, and the next day you had to go to Shawn's concert and pretend that you weren't traumatized.
Yes, this really did happen. In 2015, a man woke up to a strange post-it note sitting on his desk. On it was a to-do list that he didn't recognize in handwriting that didn't look like his. Since he was up late the night before doing some work, he assumed he must have written out the list when he was half asleep and kind of forgot about it, so he just crumples it up and throws it away. 2 weeks later, he wakes up to dozens of these post-it notes all over his wall, and they're all blank except for one that, in the same weird handwriting, says, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you." Now feeling totally freaked out that some crazy person is crawling around his apartment at night, he starts looking for signs of a break-in, but there aren't any. Instead of calling the police, he shares his experience on Reddit asking for help, and one user's comment literally saves his life. Turns out the man was writing the notes to himself and then forgetting, because his brain was slowly dying due to a carbon monoxide leak that was only discovered because a user suggested he install a detector.
As some of you know, when my mother forgets a word, she is the queen of coming up with new words that aren't bound by the laws of English. And usually they're fun, but sometimes they're terrifying. I was like 16 when this happened, but she ran in from the backyard, kind of panicked, and was like, you need to be careful when you're out there. I just saw one of those, like a spider lobster. And I was like, I was trying to do my homework, but you saw what? Spider lobster. I forgot what it's called. I was like, I'm gonna need you to think harder because I can't sleep with a spider lobster outside. It's gonna get me. And she's like, okay, picture like a crab who's just like a total asshole. So I was like, okay, I could take on asshole crab 1v1, but spider lobster, that'll beat me in the cage match. And I think it'll drag me to hell after. And then I visualized a spider lobster in my head, and I was like, Mom, do you mean a scorpion? Because scorpion in Spanish is just escorpión. And she's like, oh shit, you're right, it's the same word. I was like, yeah, wait, we have scorpions?
Storytime of how I found out that I was dating my own brother. Yes, biological brother, same mom, same dad. So a little background information, my mom passed away when I was 2, my dad is currently in jail, and I live with my grandma. So at the time, I was 14, about to be 15, he was 17, about to be 18. So how this all started is one day I was at the baseball game with my friends, and he happened to be there. I was fangirling over this boy. Like, I saw him, and I was like, I'm going to marry him one day. I was feeling a little bold, so I went over and got his snap. And then I figured out that he had the same last name as me, and I was like, dude, that is dope. My exact words were, now I don't have to change my last name when we get married. So we hung out the rest of the baseball game, and I was starting to fall in love with this kid. Like, his smile, his laugh, I talked about him to my friends the rest of the night, and me and him started snapping for a while. So we started to hang out a lot. We may have hooked up a couple times, but I had to keep this all secret from my grandma because she forbid it I dated somebody. So fast forward a couple weeks, we start dating. Months and months and months go by. Our 9 months come, and I finally tell my grandma. And this is where it gets bad. I'm running out of time, like, for part 2.
I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister, and her name's Ashley. And we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, you need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night. And I look at him and I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like, I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night. Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, no. He's like, no, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her. So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, we don't go into each other's rooms, do we? And we agreed that we do not. And they said this has been going on for months. So for months, somebody or something has been going into me and my sister's room for about 15 minutes every night and watching us sleep. But it only gets worse.
This is why you should never stay in sketchy motels. In 2005, a young woman on a solo road trip across the country decided to stop for the night. The first place she sees is the Mountaintop Motel. It looked pretty cheap, but she was tired, so she said good enough. The check-in guy eyed her up and down very uncomfortably and then asked her if she was traveling alone. She ignores the question, pays for her room, and then walks away with the key. When she gets inside her room and sees there are literally cockroaches in her bed, she says nope and decides to sleep in her car in the parking lot. Around 3 a.m., she wakes up to see the check-in guy using his own keys to get into the motel room she was supposed to be in. A few minutes later, he storms out and slams the door and starts walking towards her car. Terrified, she hides under her blanket as the man tries to open her car doors but can't and walks away. She speeds off and calls her friend and asks her to look up the address of Mountaintop Motel so she can give it to police. Her friend's quiet for a second and then just says, "The Mountaintop Motel closed a week ago."
I'm walking back from the park because it's actually really hot in this jacket, and a guy's catcalling me, and he's like, how's that jacket, baby? I was like, it's nice, thanks. And he goes, are you single? I go, no. He goes, me neither. What's your number? And I was like, are you for real? He goes, yeah, but at least I'm honest, baby. So all I say is, go call your girlfriend, go call your girlfriend, and I walk away. He's screaming at me now, bitch, you're a bitch. That's why we're not polite to men who hit on us.
So me and my friends have been hiding my grilled chicken leftovers at each other's houses for over 2.5 years now. First, I hid them under Jordan's bed, and then she tied it on the back of Nina's car. Nina brought it up to school and waited to give it to Alyssa for her 21st birthday. When Alyssa found it, she saved it to give to Jordan for her 21st birthday, and we hid it in her closet. After Jordan found it, we opened it up to look at it. Then we immediately put it in Marissa's car, and she found it when she got home the next morning. 9 months later, I found it on my car and eventually gave it back to Marissa. Then Nina got it for her birthday, and we celebrated 1 year of having the chicken. And somehow Nina found it on our car and gave it to Alyssa for April Fool's Day. Then she mailed it to Jordan's apartment. I found it on my car and gave it to Nina the night before we left for LA. Then at Jordan's little sister's grad party, we had the caterers bring it and surprise her with it. A few months later, we burned the original box and put it in a new bag and had a little photo shoot for the chicken's 2nd birthday. Then Alyssa got it for her birthday again. Most recently, we snuck it under Jordan's tree for her to open Christmas Day with her family, which, by the look on his face, her dad totally seemed to love.